Hi, everyone. Welcome. Carl Steinbeck here. I want to talk tonight about the fact that we have a lengthy co-counsel relationship between Georgia Cappleman and Sarah Dugan. As trial attorneys, we talk about who's first chair and who's second chair. If they have more than one attorney, you can also have more chairs in that in sequential order of who's going to be the lead and then who makes the primary decisions and all that kind of stuff. So that's the lead chair, first chair counsel. And then you could have the same for the opposing counsel as well. Though if there's more than one attorney, they'll have a first chair, second chair, et cetera. So here in this particular trial, it looks like we'll have the first chair of Georgia Cappleman again. And the trial I'm talking about, of course, is Donna Adelson's upcoming trial in September in the Tallahassee courtroom for the murder of her ex-son-in-law, Professor Daniel Markell. And then we also have as second chair Sarah Dugan. Sarah Dugan is fully capable to be a first chair in her own right. She's super outstanding, as we've seen her in the past trials for the co-conspirators as well. So they have a history of working together, but not only just working together on other cases, but working together on a case that's related to this Donna Adelson one. In other words, the other co-conspirators. So they both worked together on the retrial of Katie, as well as the prosecution and conviction of Charlie Adelson. So that is two that I think she's established herself is superior to most second chairs. Like I say, she's good enough to be a lead counsel as well. So I think those two together will be a dynamic package to go against the defense team for Donna Adelson, who we know is Daniel Rashbaum from Miami. So he's all the way in Miami, 7.5 hours south of Tallahassee by car. And they wound up going with a local counsel this time for Donna's trial. Keep in mind, Daniel Rashbaum was the attorney, the lead attorney for Donna's son, Charlie, the periodontist that was convicted of murder last fall of the same Daniel Markell. So these are co-conspirators. And ironically, after being part of a losing team, leading the team into a loss, a conviction of murder one, Donna Adelson relies on the same attorney to hire her to defend herself in the murder one charges. And instead of going with this New York City led team of jury consultants that came down and were going in and out of the courtroom, there's like at least 3 or 4 attorneys that are going in and out of the courtroom there in Tallahassee, which looked really bizarre, I might add, and was really unprecedented, something you don't see in a criminal trial, especially in a smaller town like Tallahassee. And plus, they're all out of towners anyway, so that never goes good with a local team like that. So they did decide to go with a local co-counsel this time as second chair, and that's Alex Morris. So Alex Morris was signed up a few months ago, and I thought he would be more of a handholder for Donna, and he'd also be there to assist specifically in jury selection because he's grown up there, knows the town, knows the culture, something which Daniel Rashbaum cannot speak to. And so I think that's why they used him. And I think with Donna, though, there's not much that we've seen on the records indicate that there's communication between Donna and him, either by phone or by visitation. Most of her contacts through counsel are with Daniel Rashbaum, and most of that is through her phone or pad. So there's not a lot of in-person visitations. And apparently she's known enough of him over 10 years that she feels comfortable with him. So comfortable, in fact, that they go out together to eat together, and with Daniel Rashbaum's wife in attendance as well. So there's a really close, cozy relationship there, which I try to recommend refraining from as an attorney. You never want to get too cozy and chummy with your client, because what it does is the more you have that personal connection, the less objectivity you have, the less sharp you are, the less ability you have to think outside the box and think what's best for my client, the client that's in a legal situation and not your friend or close loved one or someone that's like a mother that you have that affinity to. So you actually want to keep your distance from them. So don't know if that was really something that he was saying strategically just to warm up to the public that she's a nice grandmother type person, or whether he actually really believes that or not. But the fact that, like I say, they're going to dinner together and they've had this relationship over 10 years. And so Donna talks to him a whole lot, as we know. And so I think that her reliance on him might be such that she trusts him over anybody else. Doesn't matter what anybody says, including Alex Morris, where she's going to go with what Daniel Rashbaum says. And if Daniel Rashbaum says, I recommend this, then Donna's going to do that. So I just think, though, that from my experience, if you have for the first time, think about what I just said about George and Sarah having a long history. They work in the office together. They have a culture there. They all fit in well. And so they're bringing that to the table now against Donna versus two counsel that have never worked together. Think about that. They have never worked a criminal case together, Daniel Rajma and Alex Morris. And so the first time they're going to work together is on a murder case. So that's a really high order. It's really a challenging thing because you all have different personalities and pet peeves and ways of doing things as trial attorneys, and for them to be in such different type cultures anyway, Miami versus Tallahassee, the legal communities are really different, even though same rules apply to all, whether statutes or rules of evidence or case law you're looking at. It's all going to be the same, but the local rules are going to be a little bit different in the courtroom that the judges set. And so that might be a little bit different, but it's not going to be a real substantive difference in how you conduct yourself as an attorney. So I think the real thing that comes about is how you interact with juries. And the juries in Miami are going to be totally different kind of personalities and backgrounds than you have up in Tallahassee. Tallahassee is more of a conservative town. It's more of a blue collar type town. It is very academic oriented. That's where the Florida State University is, and there's also another A&M University there, I believe, and also where the state government is headquartered. So think about it, this murder happened in the backyard where all the Supreme Court justices live in that area in Tallahassee. And what you have also is all the senators and representatives that come in there. Granted, they don't live there full time; they're just there on temporary duty, fulfilling their legislative function. But they also have this sort of in their backyard, if you will. And so there should be a lot more interest, I would say, and outrage over the fact this case is going on 10 years and we've only got one Adelson convicted and another one in the firing hole, and then we got two more to go. So that's why we're here tonight, to help talk about the issues. And I'm going to ask you to hold your questions until my opening statement here is over, and then go ahead and ask your questions, and I'll do my best to get to all of them. So in any event, the thing is the experience factor and the lack of experience factor, those two things going against each other. I really think that's a huge jury. And the fact that they now also have a rapport built with these witnesses, and that winning rapport that Sarah and Georgia have together. And so a lot of these witnesses will recall them being interviewed by Sarah and also Georgia. And I imagine they would go to their offices again before trial and rehash what they're going to go over, and just give them a little prepping again. And that this has sort of become a routine now. And this is going on for how many years now that they've had these same kind of witnesses, whereas Jeff Lacasse or one of the police officers, like that awesome uh, Sergeant Corbett, who did such a great job testifying to all that digital type evidence with the phones and whatnot. So, I mean, this is sort of like lock and load, they're ready to fire away and bring down another Adelson. So, I think it's going to be pretty much routine for Donna Adelson with prepping these witnesses. I do expect there to be more information, more evidence that they bring forward against Donna, based on the fact that they did seize evidence from her condo there where she lives with her husband, Harvey. And they also have her phones that they seized at the airport when she was trying to flee the country within days after the conviction of her son, Charlie. So I think with all this coming together, we're at a few months away from trial now. I think that the prosecution is really confident. They got a strong case against Donna. Keep in mind, if she'd have been a co-counsel, or excuse me, co-defendant at the trial of Charlie, she would have been rapidly convicted as well. So they're really just having to do the same thing over again unnecessarily, in my opinion. And I think the evidence will bear forth that she'll be convicted in rapid fashion as well. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to questions now. If you can put a question mark with a red emoji. So if you go to the emoji section of your um, keyboard, I guess it is, and then look for the red question marks, it'll make me spot it easier from your comments. We do have any super chats turned off, so we won't get those kind of distractions. I am looking for the best questions. So I haven't been on much in the last month due to my move back to being near family. So, but I'm happy to see you guys tonight, and I recognize so many of your names here. So I'll jump right to the time frame we got right now. All right. Jana Berger is asking, do you think Wendy's counting down her days of freedom? I think that she's probably in such cognitive dissonance that she's really not trying to think of that much right now. But if I was her, I'd be very much, yeah, counting it down your days of freedom. And a lot of people wonder why she hasn't left the country yet. And is she going to be like Charlie, where she's kicking herself, thinking, why didn't I leave the country? I could have gone to another country and never had to worry about being behind bars or whatnot. But I do think that she's going to believe that she has the ultimate safety with her connections, that she's not going to get prosecuted. But I think that that the future will reveal that she'll probably be arrested in the next year. And so, following that up as well, Lolly77 is asking, do I think Wendy will be arrested after she testifies at Donna's trial? I think it's going to be very short order after there. I don't think they want to run the mistake like they did with Donna, where Donna almost got away. They had to jump through hoops to try to get that arrest affidavit and warrant for arrest process in that same day before Judge Everett. Otherwise, she would have boarded the plane and they wouldn't have been able to nab her. So I think they don't want to wait for that. I trust they're not going to wait for that with Wendy and also Harvey. Otherwise, they may, like I say, run the risk that were she actually successful in escaping jurisdiction and prosecution. Zach Sawyer's asking, with the kind of immunity that Wendy has, can anything that the defense asks her be used against her, and only the prosecution questions can't be used? Well, I think the prosecution questions are the one they're going to really try to frame it on. I don't think something that comes out of the defense questioning is going to be anything that would be as relevant, unless it is also something that's proven to be a lie. So I would say that that's not really something that they would be driving for. They're looking at what kind of response she gives to the prosecution questions. Although there's nothing to stop it from also being a defense question as well. But I think they would be really focused on the prosecution questions that she answered and how they constantly evolve and flip flop. Linda Mon is asking, do they pull people from jail witnesses? Will Wendy testify for Donna? Yeah, they're going to bring Wendy again, just like she's done it in the other trials as well. It's a formula that has worked in terms of bringing forth convictions. And so I think that's something that is definitely going to happen. And if they have to pull people from jail as witnesses, yeah, just like they did with the testimony of the driver, not Sigfredo Garcia, but Luis Rivera. So I think definitely they'll bring him back in his jail garb, prison garb. And Lillian Hernandez asking if John or myself will be at jury selection. No, I don't. We're not going to be at jury selection. I know John's going to try to attend most of the trial, but I may just go in for the last part of it like I did last time. So let's see here. Do we? New Jersey Beach Lover 1 is asking, do I believe the prosecution has someone keeping an eye on Wendy 24/7 so she doesn't leave the country or try to hurt herself if she senses they're coming for her? Well, as far as hurting herself, there's really nothing anybody can do to stop her from doing that. They're not on her, and they don't have her under surveillance or anything like that. And if somebody's in their house, they have absolute privacy there. So I do think that I do hope there's some kind of tabs on her, but I'm not sure. And I would sure hope so, though. But I'm just not sure about that, and it all depends on how soon they're getting ready to arrest her, and what stage they are in building up that arrest warrant. Gene Philpott is asking if I think the prosecution could possibly call Rob, the older Adelson son, to talk about his mother's treatment of him. I think that could be definitely relevant to this case, and I've said that before. And I think even more critical is how they acted once Dan Markel was murdered and what they said to him, and their treatment of him and the way they wanted him to hush up and not talk about it, or things to that effect. So of course you'd talk about it if your ex-son-in-law, the father of your grandchildren, was murdered. Of course you'd be talking up a storm with all your children about it and how horrible that was, and It's like, nope, don't talk about it. It's probably what the comment was. So I think that'd be very telling to show there's a silencing going on. And I think as hard it would be for the Honorable Dr. Rob Adelson to do that, to testify against his mom. I think he's the kind of guy that he wants justice done. And if they murdered his uh, his nephew's father, then so be it. They gotta stand trial and face justice. Lisa Mana is asking, do you think they will call any of Donna's friends, or did any of her friends confess anything yet? I don't. I've said this before. From my experience, prosecutors don't really ever have the network of friends of a defendant they're prosecuting be be questioned and see what they've said and what they've been talking about. And to me, that's what I've really focused on, because you get a lot of variety of different comments that they've said, and helps prove the case. And and I don't think they really go down that road at all. I don't think the investigators go down that road, but I think it's very critical. I know as a defense attorney, that's absolutely critical, and I think it's really malpractice if you don't do that. And I've won plenty of cases by getting that kind of information as well. So you really get the truth out of the mind, not only state of mind, but also the words out of the subject, doing it that way. 504 Camp Street is asking, do I think Wendy realized how bad she is on the stand? She seems like she's getting worse and worse over the three trials, and I wonder how aware of she is as she comes off to a jury. I think she's really got that this last time, where she realizes that Georgia got her, because remember, Georgia called the FBI agent Sanford to rebut a couple things that she had lied about. She lied about whether she had a boyfriend and was seeing other men when she was dating Jeff Lacasse. And she also lied about the some things in her book, and she also lied about visitation. And so those are the kind of things that need to absolutely be rebutted this time. And I think that she definitely left there realizing it, because I also heard that in the parking lot, her attorney mentioned that she did terrible on the witness stand. So um, that's uh, that's something I totally agree with, and she should rightfully fear being prosecuted for that as well, for perjury in a murder trial. Yank Kanik is saying, after listening to the entire transcript of Charlie's jury selection, I'm 100% Donna, Harvey, and Wendy will be convicted Tallahassee. Absolutely. You just got to have the prosecution that's ready, willing, and able to go after him. And there's no doubt in my mind they could get that if they went after him. And so I think it's just a matter of time. As slow as it is, we got to keep talking about it and putting pressure on them, and not let up. I think they're probably sick of this thing being hanging over their head for 10 years. I can imagine a prosecution office having this thing for 10 years ago. The murder happened. And it's not like a cold case murder where you don't know who did it. We know who did it, and they're just slow in prosecuting them for a number of reasons, most of which are not, in my mind, legitimate, and look good for the prosecution. So I think because we got the new prosecutor in there, Jack Campbell, has been there for a number of years now. He's slowly gone against the tide that was set by Willie Meggs, his predecessor, and he's finally doing the right thing and going after the prosecutions where the evidence leads him. And so he's not gonna stop with Donna. Think about all the people, the naysayers that said that the Adelsons would never be arrested. And even when Charlie was arrested, they said, he's the other Adelsons will never be arrested and prosecuted as well. The evidence isn't there. So it's just really it's really disappointing to see people that talk about stuff like that when they've not even seen all the evidence. So the nice thing about Florida, we have these sunshine laws that reveal so much of the interviews and police reports and stuff like that, where we can form our own opinion. And if there wasn't enough evidence out there to go after any other Adelsons, then I wouldn't be talking about it. And so, but we do see enough evidence out there, and like I say, there's more than enough to convict all the remaining ones of them. So they're taking this one at a time approach. So hopefully they will arrest Wendy as soon as the conviction happens for Donna. And I agree with you, Kanik, that there's no doubt in my mind the others will go get convicted as well. Crime Prano says that the more I think about it, Wendy was way, way too organized in her thoughts in the law enforcement interview. Anyone in shock or scared wouldn't have been so organized in their thinking. Do you agree? Yeah, everything was so scripted. It was so laid out as being rehearsed. Nothing was authentic, original. Nothing was really true, heartfelt. It was all fakery that I picked up on, and the fact that how she cries, when she cries, what she cries about, when she thinks that the question's more probing of maybe her guilt, then she starts maybe doing a crying type thing as well to try to throw Detective Isom off. But if you listen through that and a lot of different weird things she says, you just come away to the conclusion like she knew, she definitely knew. We just need a few more indicators that she helped with the planning, and that's it. She's done for. And so, and the fact that you have other family members that are going to be convicted before she goes on trial, it's just going to lead the jury to believe, as jurors have said that that have done interviews, that Wendy was involved in this. This was by and for Wendy and her benefit. She benefited the most, and she has a windfall, easy life now of um, of having Dan Markel out of her life, and she can do whatever the kids what she wants. She went from being a co-parent stuck in Tallahassee to a single parent that can go anywhere she wants and anywhere her mom and her other family want her to be down there in Miami. And so it was a great windfall, and she was losing in court and losing bad and going to lose her job. So yeah, it all was a complete reversal. You can't find a more motivated case for a murder than this one here. So definitely Wendy's was involved in it, where they're gonna go after her down the road here. Elizabeth is asking, do you think Wendy broke the TV as a code? I can't take it anymore. Donna called up prepared to let her know what was happening that day. I do think that was what was decided to have as the code, and a reason to have Wendy tied up that morning as a so-called alibi to give her some kind of top cover from being a lead suspect for the police when they did the initial interviews. And so the TV code was so obvious and so really so foolish to do, in that by talking in code, it just guaranteed the connection because the code was set up, and she mentioned the TV, and she would have had to break the TV, right? So the code would be so much a thing. So that the TV got broke. It was after the first failed murder attempt on Dan Markel in the 4 to 6 June timeframe. So it happened maybe a week or so, week to 10 days after that time frame. And so if you go back and focus on that, we did have another segment put together on this channel that somebody put forth, that it shows how Wendy is directly tied to the TV code. So if you show her being tied to the TV code, that alone right there shows prior planning, and that enough is alone to convict for being a co-principal to a murder. Omar Little's asking, do I think Wendy would testify in her own defense? Yeah, that's ultimately obviously something that the client has the right to do. It's not the attorney's decision, it's the client, the one that's facing the charges here. So if she's on her own murder trial for the murder of her ex-husband Dan Markel, then it's going to be her call, but she's going to rely heavy on her own counsel. She's not a criminal defense attorney. She's not going to know whether it's a good or bad thing. But I think in her particular situation, it's not as clear cut. It was a solid thing that she's going to testify like it is for her brother, Charlie, who definitely did testify. I predicted that. I think her mother's definitely going to testify as well. I think she's sort of stuck in a box where she needs to try to explain herself, and she thinks she can explain herself. I think the fact that Wendy's doing so bad and her own lawyer tells her she's a disaster on the witness stand, I think it may lead her now to think that maybe she won't testify and just leave it as a case the government has to prove, and they don't want to have to put her on the stand. And think about it, she's going to already be, if you prosecute it for the perjury, they're going to bring up what she's already said already. So she's already made such a hot mess of her testimony. Anything she says, if she testifies, is just going to be even worse. So I'd be surprised if she testified, I guess. But the anyway, it all depends on if they charge her with perjury and admitted other statements. So if they admit other statements, I bet you she's going to be more intimidated to testify because they got her locked in on so many lies. She's going to shrivel up on the stand. Carol Tellis is saying, if Donna Adelson shows up on a walker, wheelchair, cane on their day in court, will the jury have pity on her, or will they know it's all a big horse and pony show? Well, I've said this before, Carol, that the thing is, some jurors can have sympathy like for a defendant like that. If you look at some of these other folks that have been convicted of murder, they've been in wheelchairs, walkers, that kind of thing. So if the evidence is there, that most juries are not going to do that. In case you won't have, do have a straggler that says, "Well, I don't want to put somebody." That's like a death sentence if somebody is 74, and I don't really feel comfortable putting them away for life. And so if somebody would have that kind of thought pattern, first of all, as a prosecutor, I'd try to explore that through my jury selection and make sure I have that adequately addressed. And then the follow up to that is I'm going to make sure, and as I said it within the last 2 months, I believe, I'm going to make sure I call the Markells to testify. I'm going to call Phil and also Ruth to directly talk about the impact and the loss of their visitation, because that's something that's so critical. And that think about it, that is like a huge motivation factor for this murder, was the visitation. So that's the biggest factor of the murder, and yet the biggest people that are directly affected by the continued visitation conflict that Wendy had with Dan, and then that extended to Dan's parents, is you call the parents and you develop that kind of evidence. And then the fact that she lied about it as well, and she said there's unfettered access. So if you don't call Phil and Ruth Markel, you're really dropping the ball, I would say, as a prosecutor. At least that's what I would be doing in Texas. So that's what that's how I would look at it. And so you need, if you see Phil and Ruth on there, the sympathy is going to be for them and the denial of visitation. Because think about it, the Adelsons have effectively killed off the entire family tree of Dan Markel. The living tree is killed off, as well as the one that they murdered. So that is such a huge, huge critical piece of evidence to bring forth to a jury. And we never had it in the last trial. That's how strong the evidence was against Charlie, that they never brought it. But against Donna, where you may have somebody that's thinking like you, well, maybe there's some sympathetic one out there. You gotta nip that in the bud and just crush it. And if you get that on there, this kind of evidence of denial of visitation, the lies, they will directly link that to Donna as well. And there will be a speedy conviction as well. Guarantee it. All right, let's see here. Grand Meta 7, do you still practice law? If you go to steinbecklaw.org, you can see my website there and it talks about it. So that's all I'll say about that. Hello to Judy. Nice to see you here. So Cheryl Crawford's asking you, I think they'll put Donna on the stand. Yes, I do. I think Donna's going to be chomping the bit. She can't wait to tell everybody how it really is. And it's going to be something that the prosecution is going to be more than ready to take on. So it's going to help sink her, just like it did for Charlie. So that's a good thing. And most defendants don't testify, but in this particular case, her and Charlie will both be alike in that regard. And I pretty much really believe that'll happen. So yes. Hello from Florida says, what if Wendy refused to testify against her mom? Well, what happens in Florida, if you recall, Judge Everett, when Donna and Harvey were dragging their feet and refusing to cooperate and then testify into the investigatory deposition that was set up by Georgia and Sarah, and it was going to happen at the FBI office in Miramar, Florida. They got that attorney there, that DeScalvo, to try to fight this, and the judge was going to have none of it. Judge Everett, he was like all over that, and he talked about having them arrested and brought up to court if they weren't going to cooperate. So if Wendy invokes the fifth the way it is, it's like a Fifth Amendment piercing statute there in Florida, and she's going to have to. The judge will throw her in jail right there. So I don't think Wendy wants to go to jail. So I think she's going to be forced to testify. And so it's really a strong arm statute that they got there to bust up conspiracies like that. So it's really really quite something to see. So go back and look at that if you haven't seen it already, how the judge responded. And after that, when he threatened arrest and contempt and having him hauled up in a squad car from South Miami all the way up to Tallahassee, that got their attention, both the attorneys and Wendy, excuse me, Donna and Harvey. So same kind of thing. I think same message has already been sent to Wendy. I don't think she's going to mess around with that. Nora Parrish asks, do you think Jane McPherson and other friends of defendant Wendy initially were doing themselves now and come forward with evidence? That depends on if they go and ask. Because like I say, a lot of investigators, they never go ask the friends, they never go ask the context. Hey, what did she say then? Well, how did she act that day? Did she act different? They might have interviewed Jane McPherson already. I've not seen that, but go back and re-interview, redo the whole case all over again. Who you initially interviewed, that the defendant's having contacts with. And so if she's still having contacts with McPherson, or maybe they had a falling out, and maybe all this takes is a phone call, and Jane will say some really incriminating stuff against Wendy. So it's definitely worth doing that kind of due diligence investigation. So it remains to be seen, though. Marcel is able saying, I've been attending the Chad Daybell trial for the last 2 weeks. Are you going to cover any other cases? That one I'm not tracking, Marcella, and I'm going to start looking at the one I initially had one podcast on. It had to do with the Bridigan case that was down the road from Tallahassee there in the Jacksonville, Florida area. And there's a lot of similarities to this case as well. That's why I agreed to cover it. And I'm also looking at maybe covering some of the one up in Kentucky that was really disturbing. And so, but I have not done enough research on that yet. And I know they made some arrests in that case as well. So I just haven't had a whole lot of time to do other span out to other cases, and I want to get prepped sufficiently on those. So I need definitely more prep work to be done on the Bridigan case before I start talking more about that. But I plan to do that here in the coming months. So Patricia Mueller is asking, do I think Charlie will be called as a witness? Yeah, and as a witness by whom? So I don't think he's going to be called by the prosecution. So I think it's one of those things for Charlie. If he testifies, Donna's going to be damned, and if he doesn't testify, she's also damned as well. So it's like either way, as a prosecutor, you don't really care because it's going to help sink her. Sort of like the same thing as Harvey going to show up in the courtroom. If Harvey doesn't show up in the courtroom, it's like he's scared because he's guilty, can't support his wife. And if he is there, the jury's going to be looking at him, and he's going to have guilt written all over his face and fear as well. So it's like a win-win for the prosecution either way. So I'm not worried about that. Leslie Brown's asking, many criminal attorneys start careers as prosecutors, of course, innocent until proven guilty in the U.S., but how do these attorneys transition from plaintiff to defendant? Well, we don't call them plaintiffs. We call them prosecutors. Plaintiffs is a civil court term. And so we don't call we don't use that word plaintiff in criminal law. Defendant we do. And so the you have the state versus defendant, and then the defendant's name, and then you have US versus if it's a federal case. But yeah, a lot of people start out as prosecutors because the reason being a prosecutor first is you have a chance to get on so many more cases. You get a much higher caseload. If you're starting out as a defense attorney, you're getting whatever trickles in the door. You're trying to build your practice, so it's a lot harder to build up your skill set. So that's why a lot of people start out as prosecutors first. I started out as a student prosecutor first, and that was prosecuting minor traffic type cases up in associate district court in Iowa, and then I transitioned to being a prosecutor in the military, and I became a prosecutor first and rotated to defense counsel. When I missed the courtroom because they rotated me after my prosecution stint was up, they rotated me to an administrative law position, and I was really bored with that. And so after 90 days, when I was recruited to be a defense counsel, I said, okay. And I never thought I could see myself as a defense counsel because I had the belief, it's like, well, why would I really want to represent somebody if I know they're guilty? And you're just not really doing a whole lot to for justice, but then actually setting into the role, you really see that defense counsel are important to make sure the government doesn't do overreach, the government doesn't overstep their bounds, and to make sure the constitutional rights are protected for those that are guilty and not guilty. So we don't want to ramrod people and convict the innocent. So we want to make sure that you do have an adequate defense. And so, because you don't want to see somebody convicted if they got a bad defense counsel. And I said this before. I was co-counsel on a case once where the defense counsel fell asleep, and so it's a sad to see. Yeah, you definitely want to see a robust fight for the defense, no matter how guilty they are, because you don't want anybody laying down and just basically being a speed bump for the prosecution. So, Cat Lady's asking, do prosecutors need to show Wendy helped plan the murder? This that she knew about it. Well, to be a co-principal, you have to do anything, any minor little thing to aid, abet, sort of command, counsel, procure, assist, all that kind of stuff is enough to convict you of actually being the trigger puller. So, doing anything like tipping off to Dan's schedule, finding out when he's going to be around, finding out if he's there during the time frame the hitmen are coming up, reporting that back to her brother to report it back to the hitmen, setting up this alibi, breaking the TV with her hammer. That was a question here. Like I said, I didn't really address that. Sorry, but yeah, I do think that she broke the screen. That's the way Jeff Lacasse described it. It's not the kind of thing that you get a break from a kid throwing an object at it. So it looked more the way the break was like it was a more of a direct hard object near the glass. So so yeah, you need more than just mere knowledge. Mere knowledge of a crime is not enough, even though it's about to take place against one of the an ex family member and the father of your kids. So you do need to have more evidence, and that's why there is so many other indicators, though, that a jury could easily find that she had an active and substantial involvement in this as well. So something as little as as just passing along that information is enough to get a conviction, and there's a lot more than that that's out there. So you can look at what I've assembled with John on different indicators out there on something we've done. I think it's over a year ago now. That's out here on this channel. Linda Lawton is asking, how can I explain Wendy's immunity as to how it relates to her testimony at Donna um, Dan Markel's trial? I could DM. I don't know what you by DM. So, but anyway, just I've covered that a lot before. So just suffice it to say that her immunity is such that she has immunity from prosecution for the things she talks about truthfully. What she lies about, she loses immunity for. Can she still be prosecuted for the underlying murder that she's asked about? Absolutely. And so but they have to use evidence outside of what she's testified to. So she's never testified to anything to implicate anybody. It's just all the lies she said that have actually implicated herself. So for that, for lying, there is no immunity, and that's basically it guts and thwarts any protection you had under the statute for immunity. Esmeralda's asking, if Wendy had nothing to do with Dan's murder, why would she abandon her mom and brother? Like, give no support at all during this. That's her mom. I can't think of any situation I wouldn't be there for mine. Absolutely. I mean, she's going by what her defense attorney's saying. With like, you can't be caught up in any kind of conversation with your mom or any of your other family members because all that could be used against you. Just please do not talk to them. Just shut them down. And she didn't even have the concern to say, "Hey, mom, I'm so sorry what happened to Charlie. That's terrible. Charlie's innocent." I mean, she did nothing to defend his honor or ask show any care or concern for him because she knows she's on the run and she needs to try to block her mind from any of the evidence that's going to be coming against her and the building evidence that's coming against her. So, yeah, she's running scared definitely and should be, but at the same time, she's doing as much as she can to block it out. Yank Canic is asking how long will this trial last? It should be pretty close to the same as Charlie's, maybe a little bit longer because they're going to have more evidence from the prosecution to bring in. But if you think about it, there was really nothing that defense had to present for Charlie's case, and there's really going to be sort of the same thing for Donna's case. And so her defense counsel in Charlie's case just basically listed most of the state's witnesses, and then put down a couple others as well. And then he only wound up calling the attorney for Wendy, and then Charlie. I mean, that's really scraping the bottom of the barrel on a murder case. You call two witnesses, and one of them is the defendant. That shows right there you got really, you got a loser of a case. Hold on a second. Okay, sorry about that. Thanks to my mods, by the way. So for Private Eye Posse and also Roxanne, you guys jumped on tonight. I was racing to get here. I didn't even have a chance to notify you guys. So thank you, you guys. Glad you got the notice, and thanks for your faithful diligence here to support the cause. Janie Garnett saying, "Do you think Wendy will be charged with perjury?" Well, I'll say if she's not, then the prosecution doesn't have their A game on. At least that's the way it would be here in Texas. So definitely, New Britain. Paulie is maybe from Britain there, asking if they'll think they'll go after Wendy after Donna's convicted. That's, I think, what they're tracking right now, to go after her after the conviction, not before. I really wish they'd go after her before, as I've said many times, but Joyful's asking if they arrest Wendy before Donna's trial, does she lose immunity? Well, the immunity's not from prosecution for the underlying offense. It's just for what she said at the previous trial. So in any event, I would say they could still call her and have her testify. They could even have Charlie testify beforehand, but because he's already convicted, I just don't see a prosecution want to do that. But she's she's under indictment, and because she's not going to be bonded out of jail, she'd be brought in prison or jail clothes as well. So I think that's maybe why they want to do it. They just want to wait, but I just don't know why they'd wait for that this long. I mean, it's just way too long. Wow, Anna Marie's here from the middle of the night in Sweden. Thanks for your support. So here we have Debbie Brocky's asking if they come up with new evidence since Donna's arrest, when would they go to the grand jury? How often does the grand jury meet, I think you mean? And well, the evidence, yeah, they already have a grand jury indictment against Donna, so they don't need that for Donna's case, but they probably have something more for Wendy. I do think stuff that they got out of the house, out of their high-rise condo during the time of Donna's arrest, will be beneficial and fruitful for Wendy's prosecution. And I think they probably got other stuff out there like WhatsApp or Snapchat. There's definitely something fishy with that. Gigi Ross, any Charlie updates? Well, I think Charlie is very much in the hole right now. I think he's afraid to come out of the hole. I think he's realizing his life, as he knew it, is probably going to be over unless he gets a life-saving chance of an appeal. I think his appellate attorney's probably telling him, well, there's really nothing here. If there was, I would be straight up with the Intellia, but he's not really going to find much there that he thinks is legitimately going to change his ultimate outcome, which is life in prison without parole. So yeah, I think he's willing to basically live in an isolation and cell, and he's having, I guess, reviews every 15 days to determine if he still wants to do that. But he's still afraid of what's going to happen if he goes outside of that isolation, that he's willing to stay in isolation. And that's got to be really bad for Charlie, because Charlie likes to talk, and not having people around him is going to really wear him down mentally. And I would say every day he's in isolation is another day he's closer to saying, I just want to get bring Wendy down with me if I have no shot at getting out. So I think ultimately that day will come, but it's just too soon for him to do that. But I think it's a building resentment and anger he has towards Wendy. And if he's going to rot in there and she's going to be walking South Beach the rest of her life, I think he'd rather see her go down than him be set free. So I think that's what he's willing to do, is just throw himself under the bus to get Wendy at some point. But that's too early right now. but his mental health is definitely going to be declining. So anything's possible. Once your mental health goes, anything's possible. And you can make some really irrational decisions as well. So, yeah, I think that, yeah, Canick saying the mayor of Tallahassee was excused because he said Charlie's guilty. The mayor's an attorney too. Yeah, I mean, it was just such a slam dunk win. 504 Camp Street's saying any thoughts on the timing of the TV repair appointment? Robert Schwartz showed up at just after 8 a.m. and never known big box stores to open before 10 a.m. Well, I think the Geek Squad window was 8 to noon, and he showed up at 8:20, according to the police report I looked at. So I think that threw her for a loop because she was thinking it's to be closer to noon. I was like, how many Geek Squad type appointments, especially from a big box store, ever show up before, like you're saying, 10 o'clock? So I think she had it timed perfectly in her mind and their minds. And as it turned out, being shown up at 8:20, that's why she tried to string it out as long as she could and kept the guy talking. So that's why I would bring uh, that repair guy there to see what they were talking about for so long. Obviously, there was a stall tactic, and that helps show consciousness of guilt as well. Anna Marie is asking, I'd love to have, or saying, I'd love to have those sunshine laws here in Chile, Sweden. Yeah, I think the benefit of that is you can hold the feet to the fire for the prosecution when you otherwise can't. That if you don't know what the evidence is, they can always say there's not enough evidence. But here, like in this particular case, we can actually see what the evidence is and demand justice. Society page, hello. You're saying more than enough evidence. We've seen multiple trials now. Yes, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. You know it. Beverly Lawyer saying nobody gets a television fixed, can get one for $200. Yeah. I mean, they're a little bit cheaper now than they were back then, but you're not going to call Geek Squad to show up to do that and all that kind of stuff. And then call Charlie for 18 minutes to discuss whether they have it repaired or not. The guy basically said, it's going to cost you more to repair it than to buy a new one. So why would you sit there and talk to him for 18 minutes and hold the guy up? It's all because it was to stall and create a longer alibi. Bugs Bunny Brothers asking, is it worth an email campaign to Jack about prosecuting the rest of the family? If you want to do that, I mean, you can find his email on the website for the state attorney's office there in Tallahassee, and I leave it up to you. And if you feel compelled to do that and let him know you stand behind him and demanding that, then certainly do so. Tracy H is asking, do I think Harvey will attend this trial this time to show support for Don? No, I think he's terrified. I think he's worried he's going to be next. And to how bad it looks with him not supporting his wife, I think he's that terrified he's not going to be there. And it all speaks to guilt. And like I say, whether he's there or not, the jury's going to come to the same conclusion. You're next. You should be here at council table as well, Mr. Harvey. And we look forward to your day being tried for murder one as well. Lisa Mana is asking, I think that Dan's neighbor needs to get some kind of person of the year award as his quick call led to a good description of the Prius. Just think if that call was not made. Well, I've seen people say that, but I say that it's not as critical as you think. It was critical to try to get medical support there as fast for Dan because otherwise the if we think about it, if he had not called 911, Dan would have still been dying in his driveway. Wendy would have driven by, and what would she have done if the cops weren't there, right? Would she have driven by and then used her garage door opener, assuming she had one, to close the door? Or would she have kept on driving and saw him in there and then realized that something bad might have happened or circle back around a few times? We don't know exactly but the fact is they had video camera at the gym that helped corroborate. That was the first time they got actual video that they're looking for a Prius because the Prius was stalking them at the gym there. So no, definitely he deserves some kind of award, but don't think that if it wasn't for him, they would have never found the killers. So, but yeah, he's a great guy, that neighbor, to be that concerned to go over after hearing what he thought was gunfire. Hmm. Oh, we got some more folks from Australia here. Liam is asking why the Markells weren't asked, obligated to testify in Charlie's case. Well, they were on the witness list, and if the prosecutor doesn't want to decide to call them, then they don't get called. So it's the prosecution's discretion on who they want to call as witnesses, and that was decision was made. And they knew they're going to be there is to observe the trial if they weren't going to be witnesses. So yeah, I would always call the surviving parents, and especially a murder case of such a violent, heinous crime like that. So don't know why they didn't, but hopefully they'll do that in this upcoming one. They especially need, like I say, for the denial of visitation aspects. Joyful is asking, am I giving any mentoring to the prosecution team? No, I don't. I don't call them up and tell them how to do their job. I'm just doing a critique of them, and I'm 100% behind them. I want them to do the best job they possibly can, but they if they want to reach out to me, they could do that, and I can say they haven't. And if even if they had, if they asked me not to talk about it, then I wouldn't. Then I just wouldn't talk about it. But I'll firmly say that they haven't reached out to me. But so, but I do have some idea that the people in the office are actually watching what is being said on not only this channel but other channels as well. So, but yeah, I'm ready able to help them here, and I'm not some behind the scenes paid person that's paid by anybody else. I'm just doing this on my own. Nobody else contacted me and asked me to do this to run some kind of PR. So in other words, like none of the Markells hired me to do this to try to be a PR spokesman for them. So anyway, I have no other type of contract to help anybody. So this is something that John and Ben got me started on. So GSD still is asking, has Megs made any comments about the Adelson? So Megs is double G. That's Willie Meggs. He's a previous prosecutor that was defending the Adelsons, saying there wasn't enough evidence there to go after him, and really made that bizarre statement that looked like it was more political than evidentiary based. Tracy Coe, I can't see your last name right. I'm sorry. Kosher is saying, or Coker is saying, Wendy's the one who will fall apart in jail. She won't do well at all, and I'm here for it. Do you agree? Yeah, I don't think she's going to do well at all. From what Jeff Lacasse was saying about how she couldn't handle confrontation very well. So that's not she's not going to be strong like her mom. Like lately, I've been hearing she's just being sort of defiant, wants to slug it out in court. Josephine saying she definitely broke the TV even without evidence. The jury would think so. Yeah, I think that's the ultimate conclusion. The timing of it, and then you look at all the other things she did about not letting Jeff Lacasse replace it, and making the kids watch a broken screen to make that an indelible effect on Jeff recalling it. And anyways, all this just shows extreme, bizarre calculation. Friendly Skies podcast is saying, how much weight do you think Lacasse testimony can have to secure putting Wendy on trial? I mean, I think he's like the star witness for the prosecution. He had this case pretty much solved within the first days, and the months following, he came back two more times and said, "You really need to consider these other things I was thinking about," because he never really thought they were capable of that. I mean, this is a highly successful family. You don't really think that they're capable of doing something like that. The more he thought about it, the more it sunk in on how he was treated, and they was basically used and tossed away to be the fall guy for when it finally dawned on him after a number of months after the murder had happened. And so he did the right thing by coming forward. But it took him too long to really get it. I mean, he was so he was so much able to describe the motives and actions and the bizarre things that are going on behind the scenes, the inner workings of the Markells. And the fact is that they just thought he was some kind of disgruntled boyfriend that was just looking maybe for payback or something. They never gave him the respect and credibility that he deserved, from what I saw. All right, let's see here. You guys got good questions. I already said that one, DJ Ross, about Wendy cannot plead the fifth. So I won't need to go into that. So I already said she cannot. Melon Monkers, I've already said this as well. Wendy not talking to her family and having any concern about Charlie's welfare. Even to say that, hey, he was wrongly convicted. How dare the jury do that? Nothing. No sympathy. Don't talk about Charlie. It's like he doesn't exist. And now it's like her mom does not even exist. So they just got to be fuming mad that they did this for her at her at her request, and now they're the ones paying the penalty and not her. Catalina's asking if Wendy subpoenaed as a state witness, could she also be subpoenaed for the defense? Absolutely. I think under that statute, as I recall, if she's subpoenaed by the defense, the protection of immunity does not apply as if it's by the state. So TS Jackson 72 is asking, who in this murderous family do you think came up with murdering Dan first? And why did no one say no in your opinion? Yeah, I mean, that's just too much. That, I think this is just mere speculation. I think the real desperation of Wendy is what really drove so many of the others to act the way they did. So I think her desperation and their save Wendy at all costs, the kind of thing. I think Wendy knew how to push the right buttons. And so I think that was really her that set this into motion. And no one said no because they were not gonna let her down. And I think Donna was the one demanding this particular outcome. And so it took all of them working together instead of you thinking somebody having the common sense and saying, you know what, that's really a crazy idea. You're going to resort to the extreme of murder rather than just buying a house in Tallahassee for her, letting her set up there, buying an extra house or a side by side duplex for Harvey and Donna to show up and visit whenever they want. Why didn't they retire, shut down their practice, and move up there while the kids are growing up? After all, Charlie didn't have any kids at the time. There was no other grandchildren there in South Florida. So why, if the court ruled against Wendy, why didn't they just move up there and save another condo down there to go visit? So anyway, it's just heartless. It's cruel, and it just makes this case really the most bizarre true crime case from any number of perspectives that you'll ever find. Thanks, Nurturing too, asking about Leo, LJ, and also Tigger. They're handling it pretty good, and I'm getting them outside more and more. I got a place where they need to be acclimated 2 weeks before they get fully outside. So in in about 6 days, they'll be outside, and they'll be safe out there. So I know some of you guys were concerned about safety of having cats outside, but trust me, if you got a Bengal and staying inside, they will be miserable. So I don't really have an option there. All right, SD is asking what do I think about the sentencing of the parents of the Oxford shooter, 10 to 15 years each. Okay, I did not hear. I think that's one in Michigan where they went after the mother and then the father. And from what I saw, the mother, I really thought, even though it's a novel prosecution there, I thought that she would have been convicted because it was such an extreme, reckless thing of buying the gun, allowing their son to have it, and some of the other stuff I saw about that. I thought I didn't say this outward to anybody, but internally I thought about it, and I thought they got a good chance of getting a conviction on that, and sure enough, they did. I've not seen or heard anything about the outcome of the father of the shooter if he was convicted. Apparently, you're saying he was. So apparently, the same evidence applied to both. So I think that would have been the right outcome. Parents definitely need to be more in control if they bring in a firearm into the equation of what their children are doing with it. And um, in any event, that's all I'll say about that. Tracy H asking, what are the chances Wendy will be arrested in the courthouse immediately after she testifies? I don't think it'll be after she testifies. I think they'll wait till after the conviction happens, and hopefully it'll be not a moment to spare. But yeah, that'd be nice if they did it right after she testifies. That would be such a great thing to see for justice for the Markells. Yeah, Spire JFK says Charlie's still in administrative confinement. If so, his resentment must be continuing to grow for Wendy revealing their evil secret by driving the crime scene and calling out Charlie's name. Absolutely. I think he didn't really go into her mentioning him so much in the in their interview with Isom, but I think the fact that she drove by there, that was the thing that she just couldn't help herself. And so what happened was I think he's just beside himself with anger. It's like, I knew we couldn't trust her. I knew she'd screw this up. And he wanted to come out and say that, but he came close to saying that. But he really blames her more than anything. He doesn't internally look at himself and go, gee, maybe I planned a stupid, outrageous murder and got some bumbling knuckleheads that could go do this that I knew I shouldn't be able to trust. I should have known there was cameras there. I should have known they would have had their videos all over the maps, from buses to gyms to interstates to toll tags, you name it, all that kind of evidence, to phones, you name it, all this kind of stuff was going to track them down eventually. So it was really such a idiotic plan that had no chance of success. It's just the only success has been the delay factor. So it went on way too long, but the walls are closing in on these other Ailsons. Dulce Larson, how did the police know Wendy was at the Mosaic? Judy from Age Legal Focus said that there was some kind of a tracking that they had for that. I'm not sure exactly what that was, but Judy, you can mention that here in the comments. I forget the details of that. I never did hear the source document for that, so I trust Judy has the accurate information on that. Life Goals is saying they just signed a contract to be a provider at a state federal prison. I've always worked with underserved populations, but never in a prison. Well, all the best to you. And that's honorable work that you do. Everybody needs medical care regardless of their ad, and hopefully you'll be safe there, and hopefully these people straighten their lives out and make a difference, positive difference in society. Julie Nelson has the question of whether the defense will use that consultant. I think it's Josh Dubin. That's a New York City guy I mentioned in the intro for Donna's. No, I think they realized that that was a total waste of money. He did nothing but he didn't come across well there. Trust me. The way he conducted himself, sort of dismissive and condescending to the jury, it just does not go over well, especially in the South. Now let's see here. J Pop double quadruple zero saying, how can Donna think that Rashomon is going to be able to do anything differently for her than what happened to Charlie? Yeah, that's what a rational person would say. But if you really have had 10 years, close to 10 years of trust with Daniel Rashbaum, and he treats you like a mother and stuff like that, that's your only grasp for hope, because you really don't trust anybody else. You realize you're guilty, and so you probably think that the one that acts like they believe you the most is just saying the right things. You're gonna run to that person and expect them to defend you. So um, Yeah, having a jury consultant was a total waste of time. Yeah, absolutely. Susie Mendenhall saying if there is enough evidence to bring against Harvey that he had prior knowledge of the plan to murder Dan, could charges of obstruction or knowledge after the fact be brought? Well, if there's some kind of there's always something you can do accessory after the fact, but I've talked about his involvement in foreknowledge before, and that was a few months ago. So if you want to check on this channel, you can see what I said about that. There's a whole show dedicated to Harvey. So check that out, please, if you're interested. Sunshine Girl saying, "Do I think Dan and Wendy's therapist will be called to testify?" I don't know if they even interviewed the therapist, and so that remains to be seen. And whether they have, that's probably something that would be, sort of be a little bit convoluted because the privileged communication there involving Wendy and maybe not so much with Dan. I don't know what the Florida laws would be on that, but they may have some kind of privacy issues there that would prevent them from doing that. But that'd be interesting to see what the that person would say, though. Julia Nelson is asking about defense changing venue. What are the chances? It's not going to happen. This case is not saturated in the minds of the media, or excuse me, the public there in Tallahassee. So I think they're going to be good to go. It's really rare to get that granted in Florida, anyway. Oh, Phil Markel. Oh my gosh, that listening live. That's awesome, Phil. That you can join us. Thanks so much. Um, I guess for your questions in red, I'll look for your name. You don't have to do it in red, sir. If you just want to do your questions, I'd be honored to answer your questions. So, thanks for joining us. We're doing this for you, and all these people love and support you, and our heart goes out for you for what you've had to endure. So, justice is not done; it's still happening, and we're gonna believe that will be done, and you will definitely be satisfied with the ultimate outcome. Well, I believe true justice never happens because true justice would be, the death being reversed and your son being back and all those years being replaced. So true justice never happens on this earth anyway. But yeah, justice, the earthly justice for the killers definitely needs to happen. So thank you for joining us, Phil. Yeah, I've not seen Phil before on this channel, so that's a great honor. And I know the Markells are very appreciative for all these other channels that are out there, and some of you guys are on here today as well that they're very appreciative for, and they're so humble and gracious in the way that they speak about everybody supporting them, and they don't have any hate in their hearts, or even the people that killed their son, they don't have hate in their hearts for, and yet you see the hate, nothing but nonstop hate of the Adelsons for them. It's just so bizarre. But you know what? That bizarre hatred that they have against the Markells will be the thing that ultimately convicts them. So we just need the prosecution to ramp it up and go after them and have no mercy in the courtroom. Sonny F is asking, would a judge ever be able to sentence below the minimum, asking for another case? Well, different states have different rules, and you can go below minimum. There, unless it's a mandatory minimum, but even if it's a mandatory minimum, there's a certain exceptions that normally apply, both in state and federal courts. So I don't need to get into all that, but Kim Cole's asking, do I think Kitty held back some information? Does she have more to tell to sink Wendy? I do think so. I think she's held back. I don't think they'll make a plea bargain with her. I think they'll wait to see what she has to testify and what she's willing to offer up. And I don't think there's a mechanism for a plea bargain, quote unquote. I think based on what help she provides, material support she provides for the prosecution of other Adelsons, I think that's will be the thing of what they go back to the judge like they do in federal court and say, they recommend a 22% reduction and based on X, Y, and Z that she helped provide for substantial assistance for the prosecution of others. So that's the kind of thing that she's talking about. So Deb R saying, when will they start having retrial hearings? I don't know what you mean by retrial hearings. Nothing, there's nothing to have a retrial hearing on whatsoever. Murder by Maestro saying, Phil Markel, your son changed the way I think through his writings. Well, that's very nice of you. What a nice comment. Thank you. Nice to see you guys back here. Thank you. Okay, Watercolor Mama is saying, with 10 years passing, isn't it possible Dan's son are putting the puzzle pieces together and may actually be in favor of the chaos coming to just an end? Their eyes and ears are very aware now. I don't know exactly what you mean by the chaos coming to an end. I don't think they really know what kind of harm they're in and how they're being affected by the way they've been raised by the folks that killed their dad. So I don't know exactly what you mean by that. And I think they're in chaos and they don't even know it, and they don't even know how this affects them. So I think the longer they're in the chaos situation that they're in right now, where they don't see the Markells, that's the real chaos. So if you want the think about it, the Adelsons could make this chaos in terms of visitation end if they just offered up and said, you know what, why don't you go up there and go see the Markells here? They're old enough now; they could fly up there. Um, and why don't you go see your father's gravesite? The father you've never mentioned in our home, probably. Why don't you go up there and see the other Markells that live in the Canadian area there, and get to know your other cousins and whatnot? But no, that's not going to happen. So yeah, that a lot of that chaos is has been an ongoing thing, and part of the reason that we speak about the disgust of the hatred they have for denying visitation for the living surviving Markells. Yeah. Bugs Bunny brother, you can go to my website. It talks about my military rank. Thank you. Steinbecklaw.org. Okay, let's see. Lynn Miles asking, what's the funniest thing you have ever seen? Well, I mean, there's lots of funny moments at trial and stuff like that. Are you asking? I assume you're meaning a trial setting or a criminal case setting. Um, I would say one of the funniest though is was the opening for um, Daniel Roshbaum when he did his opening. I knew it was game over. That basically he knew he had no defense. When I saw his witness list, I realized that he knew this is there's no surprise in this case. There's nothing to defend Charlie with, and it's just basically he's just throwing mud on the wall, hoping it sticks, and he really doesn't really have any good arguments to try to confuse the jury either. So, and Charlie wasn't a likable guy, so I mean, he had really nothing to work with. So, I thought when his opening, when he started rambling and talking about traffic and this and that, and I just started losing it because it was like in a way it was good to see that he was just having to ramble on like that about nonsense. Because if you ramble about nonsense and you've already lost a jury in your opening, you know it's going to be a good day for the prosecution. And so that's what that was pretty funny. Five four Camp Street is asking, have you ever worked a case involving bad forensic evidence? My first cold case involving hair microscopy. So I'm curious if you've dealt with it. And I see Phil here too. Um, I'm trying to think bad forensic evidence. I know that there was a like I've had some DUI cases that they had a bad breathalyzer machine in Iowa, and the breathalyzer machine was so bad I even called the manufacturer, and they gave me said they pulled the blueprints of that machine out of the garbage. Literally, the guy happened to call me and said, "Oh, gee, I just threw that in the garbage. You want me to mail it to you? Because we stopped using that years ago. It'd been like a 20-some-year-old machine, and I was using these machines to prosecute and convict people for drunk driving. So, and it's really a bad thing because a lot of guilty people were able to get acquitted just because of the fact that their defense counsel could make fun of these old machines. And so, so yeah, I thought a lot of the machines there were not reliable. So I think there's probably some convictions on wrong convictions based on that, perhaps. But I also did have a rape case where they had some forensic evidence that had to do with rug fiber samples and whatnot. I was suspicious of that, but I didn't have any direct proof. So I can't think of any case offhand though. Bad forensic evidence. I've had a case where there was a shaken baby type thing, where there was a cranial skull fracture, and they were accusing the parents, both mainly the my client as well as the baby's mom, of shaken baby syndrome, and ultimately there was an expert that came forward uh, from from some reliable state hospital that said everything that my client said was consistent with the explanation of injuries, which was nothing criminal involved at all. So yeah, the state had evidence to say it was shaken baby and stuff like that. So that was something that was, I would say, bad forensic evidence. Anyway, I could go on and on talking about that kind of forensic evidence, but yeah, I disputed that. So I guess that was probably the most serious one I can think of. Nora Levine asked, "What is it like to prosecute someone you may believe may be innocent?" Well, I've never been in those situations, Norla. I've talked to a prosecutor who prosecuted somebody they believed was innocent, and they thought they'd be acquitted, and as it turns out, they got convicted. So I've never been in that situation, and nor would I be, and I don't believe it's ever been the case, because I think if you do enough of your homework, I think you can avoid those situations. But I think a lot of times those kind of things happen because people cut corners, they don't do due diligence. And so I've said many times, all it takes is a derelict prosecutor, defense attorney, a bad judge ruling, some cops that don't tell it like it is and make stuff up, or a bad lab. And there's so many like factors of error that it can equate to someone being wrongfully convicted. So if any one of those fails, then you can have innocent person convicted. So I try to make sure it's never going to be the role I have, either as prosecutor, defense attorney. And like I say, if you do enough digging of the evidence, it always leads you to make the right decision. And ultimately, the jury will make the right decision too if you get that before them. Ella from Florida is saying, "Phil, I'm sorry for your loss. I hope all involved are met with justice. Dan made a difference in this world, and his children know that in the future as well." Yes. So thank you for your nice comment to Phil, and the legacy of Phil, and also his son, and also the grandkids will live through this, and we cannot let evil triumph like they've been trying to do it so far. So one by one, they're going down. Yeah, Kathy S says Miss Georgia did not hold control of who got prosecuted. The who ran the ship was super close to Adelson's. The new guy came and promptly moved to prosecute in 2016. That's not totally accurate, in the sense that he wasn't close to Adelson's. There was a connection of the Adelsons to somebody that had the political ties to Megs that indicated that's probably why the Megs made that statement about there not being evidence against Adelson. So that's not exactly right. But yeah, it's not really the Georgia dragging her feet. Let's say it is ultimately rested with the state attorney. And right now it's Jack Campbell. So, but I think, like I say, I don't agree with the timing of it, but I do think he's moving in the right direction, and we'll see more arrests and convictions of other Adelsons. Thanks, John. I see you here. Nice to join us from up there in Louisville. Andrew Diamond is asking if Wendy's name can be flagged with TSA if she books a plane ticket. I think that could be possible. I just don't know if they've actually done that. So I hope you're right. Definitely hope you're right. Tracy H is asking, does Donna have to stick with the same story that Charlie used the defense? I'm not going to talk about what defense I think she's going to use, but I would say it's the same 2.0 version for the most part. So that's all I'm going to say. And otherwise, what are they going to say? Charlie's story was a complete lie, kind of thing. So I don't think that's going to think that's anything they do is going to turn out for the good. So don't really need to try to go down rabbit holes. After all, Charlie's defense, I think they got that from Wondery, and they try to make that trying to make that be a legitimate thing. And also, I thought about those jury consultants that they used, and they supposedly had these mock jurors that they pulled. I mean, what kind of mock jury would believe any of that garbage that Charlie said? So they must use such a streamlined version of a summary of the evidence, or misleading the summary of the evidence, that it really was just a wasted effort. So it built up false hope, I guess, for Charlie. But in the end, common sense prevailed, and the evidence spoke loud and clear of Charlie's involvement, as well as the other Adelsons that were living in Florida. Society page is noting it's why she changed her story and adds new tidbits each time she testifies. Yeah, each time it gets worse and worse. More and more lies are told, and it makes it that much easier to prosecute her for perjury. Definitely. Okay, Riley H is asking, what happens if a witness who has died as a witness was a witness in previous trials? Actually, funny you mentioned that comment, because, or question, because I just talked about this a couple hours ago. So think about it. They don't. This case doesn't have any depositions that I know of, right? Charlie's case only had a couple of depositions. One of them was the neighbor that called 911. One of them was Amy Adler, the girlfriend professor in New York City. And there was a third one I can't remember, call off the top of my head, but there's only 3 depositions in a murder case, of all things. And what I can say is that this is for Donna's case, so everything starts new. Donna, in order to have if a witness dies, Donna, if she wasn't there in a deposition to have her attorney and her present to ask this witness questions, that deposition and videotape cannot be introduced into evidence. So right now, if a critical witness dies before trial and they have not been deposed, then guess what? That witness testimony will not be admitted. That's what the rules we have in the 4 states I'm licensed. And it probably extends to that way because all states follow the federal rules of evidence. And that's what the federal rules specify, that if the declarant's unavailable and you didn't previously have them, the ability to have cross examination of that witness, then their testimony is not going to be admitted. So, in any event, that's why it's really I say evidence tends to degrade over time unless you have like maybe digital evidence that can be saved and stored. So, Cheryl's World is asking, how do I think the jokes and laughter of Jane McPherson will go over in the Wendy Adelson trial? Yeah, that's going to go over like a lead bomb, and it's going to inspire a lot of thoughts of, you know what, she's trying to play us. She played Isom then. She's trying to play us now, and she's not going to win this time. She won. She won with Isom for a short while. She's not going to win with us. Then it'll help lead to her conviction, no doubt about it. That's a good thing to draw on that. Yeah, there's so many things in that interview that she did. They're just like, there's no way this person wasn't aware and ultimately happy for what happened to Dan Markel. Hi to Dr. Cancella. Okay, Linda Mon is asking, could the death penalty be instituted under any circumstances? Well, the death penalty in this case was chosen not to be used for Charlie or Donna. It was initially used for Katie and Sigfredo, but when the jury didn't come back for Sigfredo for death penalty, then they decided never go use that again. So that's what their decision was. If they wanted to go after the Adelsons for that, they could have, but they decided not to. So that's what they did. That's what we wanted where we are, where they're facing non-death penalty, which is life. The penalty is life without parole. Julie Nielsen is asking, do I think Sarah Catherine Dugan is equally qualified as Georgia? I would say that Sarah Dugan is in some ways even better than Georgia. I think both of them have credibility. I think they're both likable. I think likability and trust is absolutely critical as an attorney, and that's why as a prosecutor, if you don't have that, you're pretty much really going to hurt the victims, and that's why prosecutions do try to get folks that do have those two characteristics. And if you don't, yeah, you're really risking it, because if you have shady prosecutors, just think about it. You could have somebody that's convicted get off because you're playing tricks or stunts in court, or doing something shady where you lose your credibility. So, but no, Sarah Dugan, I think her ability to cross-examine folks is even better than Georgia. So I thought that she would have been doing some more cross on this last trial. But Georgia has, I think, much more seniority and experience over her. But experience doesn't always matter when you have somebody that's such a great talent like Sarah. So no, I think Sarah, she could handle this case by herself. I would be totally confident with her in that as well. So um, she's able to have witnesses under very good control under cross examination, and that's the thing that's really, I would say, the hardest thing to do as a trial attorney is being able to conduct cross examination. And I think she's proven herself with Katie and some other witnesses to be a real stellar advocate at that. And the way she also handled Sergeant Corbett, I thought was phenomenal for any kind of forensic type of expert testimony. I've said that it's like the best dialogue I've ever seen between a very detailed, complicated type digital type testimony like that with between an attorney and a witness. So that was really just really stunning. What a great job she did. So yeah, I have utmost faith and confidence in her. Sully 44J is asking, when Wendy gets arrested and goes on trial, do you think going down Trescott will be Wendy's main downfall due to the fact that she's not given the same answer when asked? I think it's not just the fact that she's not given the same answer. I think it's definitely helpful. I think that the timing of when she went down there and the fact she didn't look for the kids. So that's 1A and 1B, the two most damning things against her. And keep in mind, that's Charlie didn't mention about the fact that she didn't call and ask about the kids or run up to the house or demand to know, when did this happen? Where are my kids? I want to make sure. And so you would not leave there. You'd be freaking out. And the fact that she hightailed it out of there, obviously because she knew it was going down. And and so I think that the thing like Charlie is saying, what are the odds she's going to go there? It's like 1 in a million that should be going down there within an hour, a little over an hour after Dan is gunned down in his garage. So it's just, and it's totally out of the way. And this whole thing about everything's fabricated, from the TV breaking to the TV code to the having the geek squad there and trying to extend them longer, and setting and framing up Jeff Lacasse. I mean, setting up Jeff Lacasse for 8 months, a guy you would have no interest in otherwise, and you're trying to get out of there to get to South Florida. I mean, why would you be dating a guy like Jeff Lacasse? So anyway, all that kind of stuff rolls into one. But I would say the framing of Jeff Lacasse also is right up there with the in the top three. And there's a lot of details for that framing as well that I'm leaving out, but we'll leave it at that. Yeah, Murder by Maestro. That's a good point you're making here, and you also got some great talent out there on your channel. I don't have time to see you and so many other good channels out there, but thanks for the stuff I have seen you do. Is great talent, and great in supporting the fight here. You say here how little the Adelsons knew the reverberations of their evil actions would spread such love for Dan. Shows how out of touch they really are. Yeah, definitely. That's a great comment. Julie Nelson's asked, could Charlie be possibly threatened by other inmates, and what could possibly come? Well, that's why he's in this isolation, self-protection mode, because he's worried about what they're going to do to him. He's not having it on easy street like he did with the cop cell, the convicted cop cell he was at. Now that he's in more of a violent prison, one of the top three most notorious prisons in Florida, he doesn't want to climb out of the spider hole he's in, because he realizes he's going to get probably something really bad happen to him. So that's why he's trying to self-protect. And think about it, if he reports somebody's threatening him, then he's going to be known as a snitch, and he's probably going to get threatened even worse. So yeah, it's a life of living hell for him right now, I would say. Jay Cash is saying Charlie's appellate attorney is going to get paid a ton of money to go over the case. Only need to to tell Charlie that's useless. Basically, what we've been doing, all been doing for free. So that's a good summary. Okay, here, Dog's mom is asking, do I think Harvey has the least amount of evidence against him? There's not as much there as the others, but if you look at what I did, like in the last 2 months, there's a channel that's dedicated to Harvey's involvement, and I didn't even cover all the things at that point. And so look at that, and you'll see that there is enough. So it doesn't matter whose has the most over another. What matters is, do you have enough to prosecute and convict? And that's something that I address there. Yeah, Joy Matt, sorry, Leo is not with us here. I did not bring Leo with us. So, but yeah, I wish the kitties were with me here, but they don't not travel and the car is so hot. So I'm just trying to get them acclimated to a new home. Okay, let's see. How old am I in questions here? 8:05, and we're for some reason, well, it's not showing what time it is here on the screen like it normally does. Lisa Hennings, you're asking, can Charlie and Donna talk in any format? Well, if Rashbaum's communicating between them, then that's the only way they could make that connection. So I do not know of any other way they could do that other than through Rashbaum. Maybe that's one of the reasons she wants to have Rashbaum as well, if he's willing to do that. But the thing is, if attorneys talking on the phone to their client in jail there in Leon County jail, they're not eavesdropping, listening, so he could say anything he wants to her. Oh, your real name's Leo. Okay, nice. Leo's probably short for Leonardo, I assume. Yeah, I live close to John, so I'm within 90 minutes of all my siblings now, so much better situation to be in. Yeah, I don't, oh, the picture that's behind me. Yeah, I can't change the camera, but that's a painting that my sister did of Ben doing some cutting and reining. So I'm basically on their Ben and his parents' horse ranch where they do competitive horse stuff. My sister still does it, by the way, so good for her. Kathy Barella is saying it appears the Adelsons are angry that they were caught instead of just being sorry that someone's been murdered. Their demeanor is not one of grief, just anger. Yeah, just like also Charlie acted on those jailhouse calls with his mom, and so he's basically not sounding like an innocent person at all. He sounds like, why didn't it work? Why didn't our plan work? We had it, I was always pointing the finger at other people dropping the ball. It's not like, how in the world there was no, I think he said at one time, like, well, I'm innocent, but an innocent person does not act like him. An innocent person don't act like him in court. Innocent people don't act like Wendy acted in the court. It's going to be the same for Donna. I mean, it's just, you cannot fake your innocence in a courtroom like that. So, in any event, they're just not good at faking it at all. Barb 417 said, "What mother could sit for hours being interviewed, not want to run to her?" Because I've said that, and Barb, I totally agree with you. That is a really something that jury's going to take home with them and help. It's going to help convict her, and I think it's definitely something that the prosecution needs to bring out and argue that as well. Oh, Rusty's asking, Carl, doesn't it bother you this has gone on for almost 10 years? Well, if everything had happened like it should, I wouldn't be doing any kind of channel here. I wouldn't have agreed to be talked to it by John and with Ben's support and others' encouragement. So, but yeah, this case was such an outrage, and I'm like, all right, this has got, if this doesn't get your blood boiling and want to shake some sense in it, people say, what are you guys waiting for? No, Leo's just at my house, my new house I'm waiting to close on. So, no, I did not leave behind. I would not do that. Never. You asked here why OJ got acquitted. Yeah, that's in a nutshell, the prosecution messed up. And there was also some issues of the defense made that case about racial conflict, and the judge allowed that kind of stuff to come in, and that was after some race riots that happened there in LA. So the prosecution also brought the case to a different part of the district where the race riots happened instead of bringing it up where the murder happened. So there's a lot of politics that got involved in that. And I just think anytime you get politics involved and you're trying to do stuff to look cute or doing a kind of appeasement type statement or gesture, or charging decisions of that way, I think you're just asking for trouble. And so, as a prosecutor, you never look at it, the race or background of the people doesn't matter at all. You just look at it from the standpoint of they're a human being and they deserve justice, and we need to go after the offenders and leave no stone unturned, and do right by them. So, starting to do stuff that's cutesy or trying to make amends for past wrongs of society. That's not what a trial is for. And if you allow the courtroom to get out of control, so the judge also has something to blame for that. And so anyway, there's a lot of blame to go around there. But um, so anyway, yeah. And you mentioned the glove here. Coco's mentioned the glove. He didn't fit. Well, that was a dumb thing. To not counter, because he was on some kind of medication that caused swelling, and of course he would have done that, and they had played into that as well. So I mean, obviously, and you can even move your thumb out. If you have your thumb out when you're trying to put on gloves, that can also affect how it looks like a glove's trying to fit on you. So, and also gloves shrink over time. So I mean, all that kind of stuff is something that was not properly accounted for by the prosecution. So anyway, yeah, it's a lot of different stuff, but I really blame the prosecution and the judge. Because think about it, he got convicted where in a civil trial where the burden of proof was only preponderance of evidence and more likely than not standard. So like a 50.01% standard, he got was able to be found liable. Okay, we got another animal over there. That's great. No, I wouldn't leave Leo behind. No, no way. Or the others too, for that matter. Kayla's asking, do I think people are paid off for the Adelsons to live unbothered for so many years? I don't think it's so much a payoff. Politics doesn't work with payoff so much as it does its connections. So you don't need to pass money. If you pass money, then there's more likely a chance you're going to get prosecuted. So in any event, I just think it's a matter of the political connections that Harvey Adelson had. And I've done that in the last couple months as well. The political connections of the Adelsons and how that could have prevented Miggs from going after him like he should have. Yeah, the Genie Crime Junkies ask why we're not hearing Donna's jail clause. Well, they're keeping a lid on that until after the conviction, because they don't want that kind of stuff to get out. It cause too much public attention, and so they're not going to release that until after the trial. Just like we only heard a short few days of Charlie's conversations after he was convicted, and then they cut us off from that. Skyrick is asking, do I think Scott Peterson will get another trial? I don't know enough about that case to comment on it. And apparently there's some other killer type people that could have been in the neighborhood at the time she disappeared. I just think the fact that he was fishing at the same location her body was found, I think that's too much of a striking similarity to you don't get a signature thing like that unless he was involved. So is it such that they could have had a reasonable doubt? That's a different standard. If there's like is the evidence such that it's by not having that come out, it could have had a different outcome. That's a different standard. But do I think he was involved in it and did it? From what I've seen, yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, John Steinbeck is my brother. No relation to the author. Yeah. He's my host and technical subject matter expert for this, as well as Ben being the assistant producer, sometimes lead if John's out of the country. I'm not following the Morphew case either, so I don't know if I'm saying the name right, but in any event. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. Thanks for you guys supporting this channel, and it's a great honor and privilege to have the our dear and beloved Phil Markell's being on here as well. So our heart goes out to you, Phil, and I hope to see you. I know John will see you in the upcoming trial for Donna, and I plan to be there as well. Not as much as John is, but if any of you guys are coming there as well, that would be great. But in any event, I do plan to cover this live stream, the trial there. So John's got some new technical gadget where we can plug directly into the court feed, so we don't have to rely on any other channels. So thanks to John for doing that. That's wonderful. And so with that, we're signing off. Good night to all of you supporting Phil Markell and the rest of the Markell family. And we won't stop until justice is done. So thank you. Have a great night. Have a great week. Take care.